Hi there. So, how do you defend yourself without kung fu? And while there was a touch of humour, it turns out that it's actually quite an apposite introduction. I grew up with David Carradine, as best I recall it was, and the TV series Kung Fu, which had two particular elements. First, you'd have the arrogant and aggressive, I don't know, rednecks, whatever you want to call them, who would want to take him down in every town. And he would, of course, effortlessly with his kung fu sort of disarm them and walk off. And the other element was that if you say grasshopper to someone and they smile, you know you're talking to someone who watched this as a child, because there was the blind wise man, his tutor, and you'd be going to flashbacks and it would be, grasshopper, why do you struggle? Water flows downstream without effort, or whatever. And there is an element of, why do we struggle to defend ourselves? And so, yes, let's take a look at defending ourselves without kung fu. And I say without kung fu because most of us, I hope, we will very rarely, if ever, encounter someone with a knife, with a gun, or with their mates, or that's bigger than us, or whatever. So hopefully, for most of us, we don't have to deal with abusive people that do pose a material threat to our life. Of course, I can't help observing that while we may not face such individuals as individuals, we've just lived through 2 years where there has been a threat to our health, our well-being, our life, and that has been imposed upon us with a great deal of enthusiasm on their part. And here we are in Ukraine with a threat to our livelihoods, our well-being, and if you go with the most, sorry, I'm near Biggin Hill and other airports, so always getting these light aircraft, sorry. But that's actually a spit. I don't know if we'll catch it. There you go. Glorious memory. So, Ukraine there, if Johnson and the West has their way, we're already going to be suffering in terms of, fuel, gas, heat, inflation, food. And of course, we're aware that strangely, food is, we may be told it's because of Putin, but we're already aware of measures to take food under control of the elite. Bill Gates buying up farmland in America, bird flu doing the rounds in Britain, all the other elements, but it will be sold as Putin, no doubt. So, yes, our biggest threat is from the government, which is of course why I started this channel. And with 80% of the people buying into the narrative from the government, if you try and challenge that, you face what I would call the much more realistic threat, the personal threat, the aggression, the anger, never mind the disinformation. I mean, combating the disinformation, well, we deal with that with people like myself and others doing research, using the government's own data, their own evidence, their own publications against them. You can hardly tell us we're lying. It's your data. It's your evidence. But that still leaves the issue of how to deal with people who get aggressive, who indeed, we've seen the post, people who wish us harm, because you putting lives at risk by not taking the medical procedure. And I will admit that, I'm very fortunate, both on Peerless Reads when I was doing that and on Facebook, the quality of the conversation is intrinsically courteous. We may disagree. I don't necessarily agree with every opinion cited, but it never gets personal, and very rarely when it does, I do my best to give a hint and a warning, and if they persist, well, sorry, don't have time for it. Again, from my perspective, there's courtesy and tyranny. You either respect that I may disagree with you, or you don't. You're either courteous or think you're entitled to attack me or whatever. And that, again, brings us back to why I think this may be helpful. And one of the things that I want to admit up front is that I don't enjoy personal attacks. I don't enjoy being accused of being X, Y, or Z. And I make life a little bit difficult for myself because I believe that I would like to see a fair and better world. If I see an agenda or something that could be harmful, and especially if I see a post which could be harmful, a position that's pushed by people without regard to other people's perspective, without respect for other people's perspective or alternative ways of view, I will tend to offer an alternative point of view, just to say, well, hang on, there isn't just one way to look at this. And you can virtue signal that, well, personally, I think that's harmful. So yes, if I comment on public posts, I'm quite literally afraid to go back and see, because I know the kind of comments that are going to be coming back at me. Anything from misogynist to man-hater to, well, maybe not man-hater, murderer, whatever it might be, depending on the topic, depending on the thing. But I think we at least have to put a perspective out there to say, well, hang on, there is another perspective. And it may attract all your vitriol, all your hate, but there's still another perspective. So yeah, I hate going back to look at comments. I avoid it like the plague. I may see one by chance, and occasionally, astonishingly, they might even be supportive, which is nice. But on Peerless Reads, I felt I owed it. I felt I was obliged, again, out of a sense of fairness, that I ought to look at each comment and offer a reply. And what I found, perhaps surprisingly to start with, was that all these trolls that would try to attack you, ultimately they were all very empty. They were very easy to debunk, if you like. So by the end, I was pretty much enjoying it. It actually became entertaining, to the point that very few people were trolling me. It just wasn't a very useful protocol for them. But it highlights that I'm human. We're human. It's not nice to be attacked. It's not nice to be accused of being, a not nice person. Someone who's the enemy. I would love a happy, simple and fair world. That's all I'd like to see, and all I work towards. So this ability to defend ourselves, I think, it has at least several important elements in terms of why it's important. Firstly, it's our own well-being. We are people who follow Peerless Reads, follow me on Facebook, watching these videos perhaps. I'd like to think that we are reasonable and fair and balanced people who just would like to see a narrative that's a little bit more based in, well, truth, which is of course my other video. So I think we're ordinary people. We're decent people. We're just people that would like to be able to get on with our lives without being controlled or told how to think or told what we should do. I don't think that's an unreasonable wish, and I don't think it's an unreasonable criterion for a fair and better world. So, whence the importance to me of I am, and whence the importance of what is a sense I'm trying to get across here, is that the first hint as to how we can defend ourselves is to remember that simple truth. At heart we are just ordinary decent people, however you choose to see yourself, but step back and there is a sub-hint here, fight or flight. You will tend to react in the first instance from fear, fight or flight. If you can just wait a moment, step back, now your conscious brain can come into play and you can start to adjust. You can start to consider, do I want to respond? Should I respond? How should I respond? So you've got two hints there. Firstly, critically, take that moment to step back and look at yourself, or give yourself that moment to think. The second element is remember, well, I'm just trying to be a nice person. I'm just trying to be a decent person. Now notice that a nice person might want to be liked, and that makes you vulnerable. There are a slight aside. You might say that most of the world operates that they would prefer to be liked, and then again a smaller part of the world want to be right. So, and surprise, surprise. When I learned this with landmark education, they posed it as like, most people fall into these two categories. You either want to be loved or liked, be a nice person, or you're someone who wants to get it right, or who wants to be right. And I sat there and I thought, oh, hang on a second. So I put my hand up and I said yes. And I said, well, sorry, I just want to make sure I get this right. And it's sort of like, it dawned on me, I guess I just answered my own question. Which is why I'll go on to, anti-abortion posts or Right to Life or whatever, and just say, well, hang on a second. I know I'm going to be hated, but I still think it's important to offer a perspective that says, well, your perspective isn't the only way. So that's, again, a third element now, to look at yourself. And are you someone who wants to be loved, wants to be liked, wants to be considered a decent person? Or are you someone who, wants to be right? And that may colour how you, proceed. The element after that, which is where we come into I am, is to recognise, well, a couple more things. To recognise, firstly, that most of the time these days, the people that hate us, the people that get angry with us, the people that argue with us, we're all online. We don't have riots in town squares anymore. We have riots on Facebook. So yes, one of the things to notice is, hang on a minute. Here I am, on my sofa or whatever, and I'm on my phone or I'm on my PC, and it's just a screen, and it's just words on a screen. And it's difficult sometimes, but it is worth reminding ourselves that, hang on a minute, it's just words on a screen. They don't know you, they don't know me. And do I really want to get into a discussion or argument with them to persuade them, well, hang on a minute, I'm actually a decent person, I've got a good brain and all. You're not going to win anyway, because chances are it's the perspective you offered, which ultimately doesn't even have to be rational. It's very simple. You're either, as George Bush put it, you're either with us or against us. And that's the mindset of the people that we're dealing with. So, step back, remind yourself that, well, I'm just trying to be a nice and decent person, and remind yourself it's just a screen, it's just words, and again, they're just, they're not even hating me or you or whatever, because they don't know us. They're just hating that the evidence is right there before their eyes, that someone disagrees with the narrative, or whatever it might be. So there's another element. And then if you want to look at, how can I respond? And it's not always easy to sort of, sometimes you might get what appears to be a very well-reasoned argument. And you go, oh dear, that's tricky. And I've got a fairly good brain, but I come up against it a lot of times. And the way I deal with it when I get someone like that is like, oh, here's a truth, and that's why you're wrong. Again, I step back, but it's a different kind of stepping back, in the sense that I try and reduce it to a simple issue. I try and look at the sort of the fundamental. I don't necessarily have an example offhand, but let's invent one. Not taking an experimental drug against what Bill Gates now informs us is, astonishingly to his surprise, a mild kind of flu, but different. Well, there we go. It started with a lie, ended with a lie. We all knew. Any analyst knew. It was in the data. He knew. But that's another story. But let's say that it's like, you're threatening people's lives by not taking the max, whatever. So step back, and when you step back, it's like, well, what might occur to me is, well, hang on. Okay, so you reckon that, I'm not vaccinated. Well, then maybe we should look at, how effective is the vaccine? How relevant is the vaccine? I mean, if I live and work from home, are you intending to stop by? Come round with your double mask on? I'm not going to see anyone. So what are the scenarios in which I become a threat? And then we look at other things like, well, what about the disease itself? What about the deaths? Where are they coming from? What is the actual risk, and what is the age profile? So that might be my particular responses based on my background and whatever. But the key thing is to allow yourself to step back and keep it simple. Try and rather than trying to, should we say, take them on and deal with their argument in their space. You might say it's a question of advantage. If I sidetrack slightly to fighter planes, air combat, or any kind of combat, there's a region in which each aircraft has a region in where it's most effective. And you don't want to fight your opponent where they are most effective. You don't want to fight an opponent where they're most skilled. If they're great at close combat, you want a very long stick. So you don't want to fight them where they've chosen to fight. In fact, that's almost another hint. Whatever they've chosen to confront you with, they must have chosen it because it plays to their strength. So the first hint would be, you don't want to respond to that. You know perfectly well that they have chosen that based on their strength. Find some other element. It might be that go back and say, okay, you're putting lives at risk for not taking. It's like, okay, well, choose another battleground. It's like, say, well, do you allow that each person can make their own decision as to what they think is appropriate? So you've now got a much easier argument. And of course, when they say, no, you should do what the majority tells you, it's like, okay, well, I don't know, that's fine. So sounds to me a lot like tyranny. Doesn't really work for me. So change, don't try and combat them in their chosen battleground, choose another battleground. And then the last measure is the simplest measure of all, is to recognize actually, you're not in a dark alley, you're not in a dead end, you're not in a place where the only way out is past this mob with clubs and knives and torches. You're just in front of your device. You don't have to respond at all. You can respond with, you know what, you sound a little contentious. Well, not really how I feel like being today. Or I'll get back to you later. The famous, I'll call you. That might be quite a good reply, because they'll know perfectly well that it's totally irrelevant. Yeah, I must try that one. I'll call you. Or simply don't reply at all. And as you've seen, I kind of feel that if somebody ignores my hints to, sorry, I don't do personal, nor do I accept personal attacks or derogatory statements. If someone ignores that hint, then maybe it's unnecessary. I could just ignore them. To a certain degree, it depends on whether they are actively trying to interfere with my posts, my community, whatever you want to call it. But maybe I do block them. Maybe it's a way of just saying, you know what, I really don't need this. And I do feel that, which is why you see me post, I feel that if I've done something, taken a measure like that, I do feel like it's appropriate just to post, say, look, this is what I've done and this is why I've done it. And I just kind of feel a little bit obliged to say, well, here's an action I've taken, and this is why this was the principle that I did it. This is why I did it. This is my perspective. Anyway, there you go. Because obviously we are all living in times where we are the minority. We are the ones that are facing people who are contentious. We are, in their eyes, we're the ones that are being contentious. We're not being obedient. We're not obeying. We're not doing what we're told. We're putting lives at risk. We're putting people at risk. We're just not being responsible. And God forbid social credit comes in and, won't be able to go food shopping or whatever. So maybe being able to be more at peace with who we are and being aware that we can protect ourselves, defend ourselves, and retain integrity. And always it comes back to, I am, in the sense that, well, at the end of the day, there is no superior human being, not out there, not that has a right to bypass your defenses, to get past your defenses, to attack you. No, and really, at the end of the day, as I say, until they put a chip in your brain, the world is out there. Your brain, your awareness, your sense of self is in here. That's okay. What's most important at the end of the day is that you protect that sense of being in here, to stay sane, to be happy to the extent you can, to live a fruitful life to the extent you can. So there you go, just in case it's helpful.